Yeah.
Community.
It could. I don't know. I mean, I'm telling you again. I'm always hesitant to believe what I see until I see it in something that's real. But the his her case is falling apart. I mean, literally, she made this case about inflated property values and all, and the judge fell for it. And yet, in the testimony today, I think he proved that Mar-a-Lago is actually worth more than what it was assessed for, and he said that under. So it wouldn't surprise me, but I think we should wait and see.
All right. Also, Angel Firstly, one of our regulars, we were talking about him last week. He's a him. He went into the hospital and his surgery went badly, and they put him into an induced coma. And I got a really sweet email from a woman who's now 36 years old, and she told me that he's been a real inspiration, guiding force, and kind of a paternal figure in her life for many years. She came from a troubled household, and he got her on the straight and narrow and gave her financial assistance and so forth. And she says she's not ready to lose him. Anyway, he came out of the coma, so now they have some cause for optimism. So she said she'll keep us posted on his condition. So all the best to Angel Firstly. We're certainly pulling for him.
Yeah.
Mohammed Kumail from Turkey. Is the UK government in panic mode by proposing such silly things as sending the Navy into the Black Sea, which my government would not allow due to a law that stops ships sailing through the Turkish Straits?
Look, the British government appointed probably, I mean, in a sweep of time, span of time, where we've seen the British government do such amazing things, such as appoint, Boris Johnson as prime minister. I mean, he got elected. Truss as prime minister. Now, Richie Sunak as prime minister. Why are we surprised that they appoint literally the most unqualified person in the world to be the Minister of Defense? And you get what you pay for. And they got this idiot that just went out apparently without coordinating with anybody in government, especially his boss, who is the prime minister. Said that he's going to put boots on the ground to train Ukrainians now, which very dangerous thing to do. Could be a cause for escalation, and to put the British fleet in the Black Sea to escort ships, daring the Russians to attack them. And then he's been he's been put in his place by the prime minister, who said, no, we ain't doing any of that. Normally one would resign or commit hara-kiri, but he just continues to bumble along incompetently, which pretty much defines what the British government is nowadays, a bunch of bumbling incompetence.
All right. One of our regulars, Galileo, is obsessed with an issue. He's inundating me and through all modes of communication. So let's get Scott to address this. Scott, kindly refrain from asserting that NATO conducted a
Ours, a martial law, but he's in a very fragile situation because things aren't going well, and he could find himself on the receiving end of a lot of bad news if he runs afoul of both his international and domestic basis of support.
Look at this, Scott. They're accusing us of being stable. I resemble that. Furthermore, I represent it.
Who knows what will happen? We'll see what kind of questions come up.
All right. How about a voicemail question from somebody in Dublin, Ireland?
Hi, Scott. This is Colleen in Dublin. I'm wondering what you recall of your visit to Denmark in November 2002, when you met with a joint meeting of the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Defence Committee in an attempt to persuade the Danish government not to participate in the invasion of Iraq. I'm asking because I was one of the people who helped to arrange your visit, and I know how disappointed you are that we couldn't stop the invasion of Iraq. But at very least, the Danish Defence Minister, Sven Aage Jensbu, was found himself compelled to resign in April of 2004 when the scandal about the no weapons of mass destruction here broke. Anyway, I'm wondering what you recall of that visit to Copenhagen in November 2002. I have fond recollections. and I'd like to hear yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I do remember it. Well, I do remember it. It was a long time ago. I recall that I wrote a book called War on Iraq, where I collaborated with William Rivers Pitt on a book called War in Iraq, and it was published in a number of languages, one of which I believe was Danish. I recall going to Denmark. I recall meeting with students. I recall giving a presentation in a theater, and I recall, I don't know if it was as formal, but I do know it. I remember, because I remember meeting with the Danish member of parliament in her office, and then doing the meeting in a conference room, and I think we were all disappointed with the results, but the purpose was, in addition to trying to persuade people, was to go on record with and get people to commit, because politically that's a dangerous thing for people to do, when somebody goes on record with something, for them to take a contrary position. And I think you saw your defense minister, or the defense minister of Denmark, had to resign because basically the lies he bought into came back to haunt him. But it was a very busy period of my life, and so you got to forgive me if my memory isn't 100% crystal clear on this. I can say that every nation I visited, because there was a lot. The book I wrote, basically, it got published everywhere. It got published in French, Italian. The Danish got published in, I think the Danish edition was also in Norway and Sweden, and German. And I traveled all around Europe during that period of time, trying to do the same thing, accomplish the same thing. And so there was that movie, if it's Wednesday, it must be, I forget where. If it's Wednesday, it must be Amsterdam or something. There was a movie about somebody going on a trip in Europe, and that's how that time period was. It flew by and all merged into one. But I do remember being in Denmark, and I do remember, right now as I'm thinking back, I'm pulling up, visuals, and like I said, I remember being in a theater. I remember there was a Iraqi refugee family there who the wife, I believe, was a refugee. As soon as I say that, I got hit. Anyways, I do remember it, and I remember it fondly, and I just wish we'd been more successful. But I thank you for helping me.
If it's Tuesday, this must be Belgium. Does that ring a bell?
That might be it. Yeah, that might be the name of the movie. SW.
A regular in Oregon. Let's see if SW is going to be his usual challenging self. Early on, you said Russian casualty estimates were reliable, as they can count the bodies as they advance. Yet we've now seen 16 months in which Ukraine has advanced 60 times what the Russians have. By your logic, shouldn't we be using Ukraine's estimates?
I'm comfortable with my estimates. Your logic is, I'm trying to figure out what your logic is. 60 times what the Russians have. The Ukrainians are getting slaughtered. Everybody admit. I don't know why. All you idiots out there, and SW, I don't know where you stand. I don't know who you are. I don't know if you're where you say you're from. I don't know anything about you. But your question implies that you might be skeptical about the Russian casualty figures, and you might be hopeful that the Ukrainians are actually doing better than everybody's acknowledging. The mainstream media, everybody, even this blonde propagandist from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense had to go on Sky News and say, "Yeah, we're losing. Yeah, we're going to lose unless something dramatically changes. It's bad. Ukraine's losing." And one of the factors that goes into losing is losing more guys than the other guy. Ukraine's getting slaughtered. It's not Russia that's throwing these futile attacks against a well-dug-in Ukrainian foe. It's Ukraine that's doing that. They're getting wiped out. So, if you don't like the numbers, I don't really give a shit. Go do what you do, whatever makes you happy. Because at the end of the day, what you think and what I think simply doesn't matter. What matters is ground truth, and it's playing out before us. So we'll know soon enough. And at the end of the day, if the Russians collapse and we find out they lost 1 million guys, you can come on the show and go, meh, to me. Now, but I'm just going to tell you that I'm really comfortable with my numbers. I'm really comfortable with my assessments. And I'm pretty confident that history will unfold relatively consistent with what I've been saying. But again, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your question.
All right, SW. We can take phone calls now. So maybe SW, you'd like to call and debate Scott for 3 minutes or less.
Why
and
do
that
you
goes
want to do that? I thought you were saying I'm in a good mood. Do you really need to get violent?
Well, whatever. You said you like to debate people. It's hard to get famous people to debate you. They're all afraid of you. So maybe SW will have guts. If not, just anybody wants to call in. We'll still stick to the 3-minute maximum. But if you want to ask Scott a question, you can give us a call at 520-525-8359. Moving on to our next question. Jamakan from Tajikistan. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Why doesn't anyone say that the Chinese drove the Americans out of Afghanistan? Chinese companies have been operating on the territory of Pakistan and under the control of the Taliban for a long time.
Americans companies were operating not under the control of the Taliban, but in Afghanistan. China didn't drive us out. China's competing. China's, doing well economically. They've made some recent decisions. One of which is to extend the Chinese-Pakistan economic corridor into Afghanistan to help better exploit Afghan resources, including lithium mining and oil and other minerals. China has the inside track on that because they have been working cooperatively with the Taliban over time. But what destroyed us in Afghanistan was bad policy and the tenacity of the Taliban. We defeated the Taliban militarily early on, and we failed to come up with a viable alternative that appealed to the Pashtun tribal majority. The Taliban is derived from the Pashtun tribal majority. And at the end of the day, they stayed true to their roots. And the Taliban made a comeback, political comeback, and they beat us. And we retreated because the war became unsustainable. It wasn't that the Taliban was defeating Americans on the battlefield. It was that the Americans were tired of being on the battlefield. And so we withdrew. And now China's taking advantage of that. Now, if you're saying that was China's long-term strategic goal, to wait out the Americans, which was a predictable outcome, then I guess you could say that China achieved a strategic defeat, but China didn't drive us out. We drove ourselves out.
Okay. I forgot to say, if you do call us, to turn down your computer. Otherwise, you'll be hearing yourself back in delay, and so will we. We do have a caller now. Hopefully this caller on his or her own knew enough to lower the computer. Hello, caller. Are you there?
Yes.
Well, go right ahead. What's on your mind, and who are you?
My name is Sherry. I'm calling from South Jersey, and I just wanted to tell you guys how much I enjoy the show and how much respect I have for Scott and Jeff. And my question's kind of philosophical. I just don't understand why people and why our leaders can't get it through their heads that history repeats its stuff. It's like the human race hasn't learned anything from the past. And I just wish that people would wise up. And I was wondering if Scott could maybe give me an answer to it. Like, why are people so stupid?
I like that question. Scott, why are people so stupid? He may not be able to answer that one in 3 minutes, though, but give it a shot.
Well, first of all, Jeff, you got to say it in a Jersey accent.
Go right ahead.
Well, I'm actually I'm a transplant from South Philly, so I kind of got a hybrid accent.
Yeah, South Philly is even more intimidating. So it's like between the two of you, 2 accents. I'm scared already. Why are humans so stupid? Well, I think because we are, I mean, first of all, we tend to be forward looking, and we tend to be overly optimistic about a narrow spectrum of events that impact us personally. And so we shape the world based upon our immediate agenda, and we take everything out of the way, and we don't have an appreciation for what went on before us. Like George Santayana, an American philosopher, said, those who fail to learn the lessons of history are condemned to repeat it. And we don't take time to stop, pause, reflect. How many times when people get into a meeting room, I mean, just think of the dynamic, and you get a group of people together and you want to plan an event. How many people actually sit down and say, hey, before we talk about going forward, well, let's talk about this. What do we know about having the past? And then listen to what people have to say. Take the time to listen and learn. Nobody wants to do that because everybody's boom, boom, boom. We got to go forward, go to forward. And so we go forward, but as a result, we get into a trap because we're trapped by historical reality that we neglected, etc. I don't know if it's stupid. I think it's just the human condition. We need more people that are willing to listen and discern than people who are willing to speak and act. I hope that answered the question.
I can't agree with you more.
How close are you to Asbury Park, Sherry?
Oh, I'm in southern Jersey. I'm about 10 minutes from Cape May.
Oh, all right. Well, if you see Bruce, tell him we hope his ulcer heals soon.
I'll do that, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you, darling. Take
care.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. Let's see what else we have here. Here's somebody watching on Rumble. Thanks for the donation, General Slim. We certainly appreciate it, and we hope you inspire others to act the same. Great show. Thank you. Please explain why Armenia is pivoting away from Russia and towards the West. Isn't this political suicide, especially after the disaster at Nagorno-Karabakh?
It's 100% political suicide. Look, one of the big problems with the Armenians, first of all, they tend to assassinate people who criticize them, so I don't want to get on another death list. But there's a large Armenian diaspora, especially here in the United States, and I think the Armenians have become a little bit too beholden to people who don't live in Armenia and therefore aren't directly impacted by this. If people aren't aware of what just happened, Nagorno-Karabakh had a population of around 120,000 Armenians who have been there for centuries. Some of the oldest churches in the world are in Nagorno-Karabakh. It's found, it's one of the building blocks of Christianity. And they've been ethnically cleansed, basically because Armenia insisted on fighting a never-ending war with Azerbaijan, trying to assert, sovereignty over this territory because it was populated by a majority Armenian. They've lost the whole thing. The Azerbaijanis have come in. I'm not defending what Azerbaijan does. I condemn it wholeheartedly. They've gone in and they've basically used the fear of death to drive Armenians from their ancestral homes. This is a tragedy. And I come from, my wife comes from Georgia, Abkhazia, where 250,000 Georgians were thrown out of Abkhazia, their ancestral homes, the same way, through threat of violence or actual violence. They have a prime minister right now who is just hell-bent on committing political suicide. He's trying to blame Russia for his political errors. People need to remember, at one point in time in the not-so-distant past, he kept Vladimir Putin waiting on the airfield when Vladimir Putin came in to talk to him. You don't do that and expect to get the Russians on your side. But the Russians have done nothing wrong here. International law says Nagorno-Karabakh belongs to Azerbaijan, and had the Armenian leadership refused to be aggressive and said, hey, look, it's part of Azerbaijan, but how can we, respect the autonomy and the culture of these people so they can continue to live in peace in Azerbaijan, they might have been able to come up with a solution. Instead, they aggressively waged war against Azerbaijan. And when you wage war, he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. They may have been successful in 1993, 1994. They were a failure in 2020. And as a result, they've lost everything. And now this guy who gambled on the West is desperately, desperately looking to put every blame on Russia. Russia has basically said the only future that Armenia has from a security standpoint is with Russia through the CSTO. But this Armenian now is this prime minister is turning to the West. Hey, Armenia, look at Ukraine. See how being affiliated with NATO helped Ukraine. That's your future if you don't stick with Russia.
Do you ever take vacations, maybe working vacations? Wouldn't you say that your trip to Russia was in some respects a vacation?
Well, it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
I mean, you were with your daughter. You did sightsee. I mean, you did some of the things people do while they're on vacation. Although you were very busy too.
No, I was more busy there than I am when I'm working. But but it was enjoyable. Every aspect of it was enjoyable. But part of the job of that trip was to learn about Russia. So even when I was, I didn't go through anything I went to. Just sort of like a leisure stroll. I went through as I was being tested on it. I had to learn what I was doing, tried to put it all in a context, and make every experience count towards the end objective. But it was, I tell you what, I would go on more working trips like that than vacation.
Well, you visit your parents in California every so often. Do you consider that a vacation?
It is. I mean, it's family duty, but it's enjoyable duty. And
all right.
I'm doing that.
Well, how about a U.S. tour of duty to North Carolina? That could be fun.
Well, that could be fun, but we have to figure out how we're going to do that.
Well, normally you go to the airport, you get on the plane, and then you leave it up to the pilot.
Well, okay.
That's what I do. I just leave it up to the pilot. Lucifer from the Netherlands. I can't stop wondering what I'd do if I were to be conscripted to fight the Russians. I'm leaning towards saving myself and surrendering to the Russians. I want to survive and take care of my family after the war. What is your opinion?
I respect your opinion, and I would forever respect your decision. Unfortunately, I'm cut from a piece of cloth that says that I defend my homeland, I defend my country. I don't defend the government. I don't defend